Hey yo, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Ace. This is Fantasized Football. We are back in the arena once again. Me, my boy, each and every one of y'all. The gang is all here, and it's Monday. So it is time for us to bang out some more individual player analysis for the 2021 fantasy football season. But before that, quick shout out to each and every one of y'all that come by on a weekly basis. Click on this here video, helping the channel grow. It really means the world to me, honest, from the bottom of my heart. I love each and every one of y'all so very much. I'm watching this channel grow day in and day out, and it's so very sick. And if you're new, thanks for coming by, clicking on the video, giving me a little bit of your time. It really honestly means the world to me. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 300 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the fantasy football season. But yes, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the who, what, when, where, why. What we're talking about today, and that is my consensus 101. I say consensus because I'm talking about me and my boy. Yeah. And that player is Christian McCaffery of the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to tell y'all exactly why he is my 101 for 2021, despite all of the injuries last season. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, like I just kind of alluded to, McCaffrey missed the majority of last season with various injuries. He had a high ankle sprain, he had a quad issue, he had a shoulder issue. But in the 3 games that McCaffrey played, he averaged 27.3 half PPR points per game. And it wasn't just a flash in the pan, because in 2019, he was the RB1. How soon we forget, right? Where he averaged 25.8 half PPR points per game, which was nearly 7 fucking points per game better than the RB2. You know what's even crazier than that? He was number 2 in overall scoring in points per game amongst all positions, including quarterbacks as well. That is just unheard of. It's ridiculousness from a running back. But if we take a look at Christian McCaffrey's efficiency metrics from 2018, 2019, where he played the full 32 games between those 2 seasons, 16 and 16, right? He averaged 4.9 yards per attempt, a 4.4% touchdown rate, 83.8% in terms of his catch rate, 7 yards per target, and a 3.8% touchdown rate in the receiving game. Keep all that in mind because it will come up later on. Don't worry, I will remind you when it does. But when you look at the Carolina Panthers, the major change that you see is Sam Darnold coming in to be the quarterback. Now, this could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, right? Because on the good end of things, he could be checking down more to Christian McCaffrey. The offense could be more efficient if he's an upgrade at quarterback, could be more scoring opportunities. On the other side of it, the offense could just suck. And there could be less scoring opportunities and less rush opportunities for the offense as a whole. But on a positive note, Christian McCaffrey has been a focal point of this offense, and I do expect that to be the same in 2021. Now, in 2018, McCaffrey handled 53% of the team's rushing workload and a 22% target share. Then in 2019, he took a big step forward in terms of the rushing game, handling 75% of the team's rushing workload and a 21% target share. Now, when you average that out, that's a 64%. That's 64% of the team's total rushing workload and a 21.5% target share. Again, keep that shit in mind. I got some ducks walking around out here. You know who's not a duck? Christian McCaffrey. But you better duck if you're playing against Christian McCaffrey. Boy, you heard me? I'm a fucking nerd. Anyways, before we get into the potential outcomes for McCaffrey, we do, of course, have to touch on what I have the Panthers projected for. 610 pass attempts, 461 rush attempts. But now it is time to get in the reason you are here and the reason why I am talking. The reason why you clicked on this video, some potential outcomes for Christian McCaffrey for fantasy football in 2021. So without further ado, let's get into kind of a lower end outcome for McCaffrey, right? Now, let's assume that the Panthers as a whole, like the coaching staff and the organization, say, hey, listen, we want to make a playoff push. We want to make sure McCaffrey is healthy if we do make the playoffs, right? And they use Chuba Hubbard a little more. He's not as involved as he was in 2019, right? Let's assume that he handles 53% of the team's rushing workload like he did in 2018, right? On 461 rush attempts, he handles 53% of that. That is going to be 244 attempts. Now, in terms of efficiency, across the board, I'm just going to say this now so I don't have to mention every time. Let's just assume this offense is a lot worse, right? And Sam Darnold kind of stinks, and the offense isn't running as efficiently. They're in less scoring positions, and we just see efficiency dips across the board and volume dips for McCaffrey as well. He's not as involved in the receiving game. Darnold's not targeting him as much, whatever it may be, right? Let's just get that out of the way now, right? So let's assume that he's at 90% of what his average yards per attempt had been in 2018 and 2019. 4.9 yards per attempt, 90% of that is going to be 4.4 yards per attempt. On 244 attempts, that's going to be 1,076 yards. And again, with the touchdowns, less scoring opportunities, let's assume he's at 80% of his average touchdown rate, right? A big decrease, not a sticky stat, not a predictive stat, hard to project, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think this is relatively safe. You take 4.4% and you use 80% of that, 4.4%, 80% of that is going to be a 3.5% touchdown rate. On 244 attempts, that is going to be 9 rushing touchdowns. Now, when we hop over to the receiving game, right? Although I do expect Sam Darnold to probably check down a little more to McCaffrey because there's no better running back in the league to do it with, let's just assume that he gravitates more to, Robbie Anderson because that's his former teammate, right? And he's just not connecting with McCaffrey as much, whatever it may be. And McCaffrey sees a large dip in his target share, right? Where he was at 21.5% on average from 2018 to 2019. We'll assume he's at 80% of that, right? That's a 17% target share going way of Christian McCaffrey. On 610 attempts, right? 17% target share, that is going to be 104 targets. Now, again, we're factoring in regression here everywhere, right? So we take that 83.8% catch rate, we use 90% of that, that's going to be a 75.4% catch rate. On 104 targets, that is going to be 78 catches. Now, for the yards per target, let's assume that Darnold's not targeting him as deep down the field, or he's just not connecting on those deep targets as much. The defense is honing in on McCaffrey a little more, whatever it may be. He goes from 7 yards per target. We're going to use 85% of that. A large disparity here. That's going to be 6 yards per target. On those 104 targets is going to be 624 yards receiving. And then for the touchdowns, we'll use that same 80% number of his 3.8% touchdown rate. That's going to be 3%. That will result in 3 touchdowns on those 104 targets. Now, when you take all that and you kind of like just mold it together and take a look at it in a nutshell, that is going to be 244 attempts, 1,076 yards, and 9 rushing touchdowns to go along with 104 targets, 78 catches, 624 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 19 touches per game, right? Over 1,700 total yards and 12 total touchdowns. 293 half PPR points, 17.2 half PPR points per game. Good for the RB4 based on all running backs that played 6 or more games last season. Now, I kind of alluded to this and I kind of already said this, but this outcome is kind of like McCaffrey's floor, right? Because we're figuring that he's handling a lesser workload and his efficiency is dropping. And generally what I kind of say, if you've been watching the channel for a while, if you haven't, I usually say that with more volume comes less efficiency, with less volume comes more efficiency. So we're kind of factoring in less volume and less efficiency. So let's go ahead and look at like a higher end outcome for McCaffrey. Definitely not his ceiling because we know what his ceiling is, but a realistic higher end outcome to see what we can expect from McCaffrey based on kind of using his average workload over 2018 and 2019 with some slight efficiency dips, right? So let's assume that he handles his average 64% of the rushing workload, right? On 461 attempts, that's going to be 295 attempts going way of Christian McCaffrey. Then we're going to use 95% of his 4.9 yards per attempt average. That's going to be 4.66 yards per attempt. On 295 attempts, that results in 1,375 receiving yards. As for the touchdowns, again, not a sticky stat, not a predictive stat, not an easy stat to project. But instead of using 80%, let's just assume there is more scoring opportunities, and he's at 90% of that. That is going to be 4% in terms of his touchdown rate. You take 4.4%, 90% of that, 4%, resulting in 12 rushing touchdowns on those 295 attempts. Now, in terms of the receiving game, we're just going to use his average target share of 21.5% on 610 attempts. That is going to be 132 targets. And then for the catch rate, we'll assume he's connecting with Darnold a little more. Builds a rapport with him early on. We take 83.8%. We'll use 95% of that. That's going to be a 79.6% catch rate on 132 targets, results in 105 catches. As for the yards per target, let's just assume he connects a little more with Darnold, down the field more often. He gets some deep targets. He's lining up out wide, whatever it may be. From 7 yards per target down to 6.7 on those 132 targets is 884 receiving yards. And then again, we will apply the same difference in terms of his touchdown rate. Use 90% instead of 80%. Of 3.8% is going to be 3.4%. On 132 targets is 4 receiving touchdowns. Now, put it all together, baby. Take that. Throw it in the pot and mix it up. What does that result in? 295 attempts, 1,375 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground to go along with 132 targets, 104 catches, 884 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. 23 touches per game, over 2,200 total yards, and 16 total fucking touchdowns. 374.4 half PPR points per game, 20.2 half PPR points per game. Good for the RB3 based on all running backs that played 6 or more games last season. So now it's time to ask the question, right? I ask this question every Monday. I've been doing it for five-ish months now, asking this question every Monday. I mean, I ask them on Thursdays now, and it used to be Saturdays, but for you, it's Monday, right? I'm doing that Inception shit again, right? What does all this shit mean? You might be asking yourself, well, Ace, what the fuck? What the fuck? You just said RB4 and RB3 from McCaffrey. Well, the point is we know Christian McCaffrey can be the RB1. The real takeaway from this is that he's safe. If he plays 17 games, I think it's very unlikely that he ends up outside of the top 5 at the position because he's super, super efficient. He's super, super involved in this offense, both in the rushing game and the receiving game. So the safety is there. Like if you draft him at 1 and he finishes at 5, it's not the end of the world. And then when you look at like these projections, 20.2 points per game, it's like a half a point lower than the RB1 last season. We know what he can be. He can be, 25 plus points per game, an absolute league winner. Obviously, it's Christian fucking McCaffrey we're talking about here. So the ceiling is there for McCaffrey to be the RB1. We all know that. Nobody's going to deny that. But the thing is with McCaffrey is he's so, so very safe. I'm not concerned about any of the injuries from last season. I don't think any of them are really recurring type of deals. The high ankle sprains, kind of like whatever, his quad, his shoulder. Not too worried about that. And I always say with running backs, man, you have to factor in injury regardless just because of the nature of the position. So what this means to me is that Christian McCaffrey is by far and away my 101, and it is not even close. I'm not even considering anyone other than Christian McCaffrey at the 101. I'm really just not, especially in half PPR and even more so in full PPR. He's going to be an absolute monster if he plays 17 games. So if I'm you, I am drafting Christian McCaffrey if I have the first pick in any and all fantasy football drafts this season. And I don't know about y'all, but that's my play. Let me know down in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 300 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the fantasy football season. I would really, really appreciate that. Check the description down below for my socials, Insta, Twitter. Follow me on there. Check out the podcast if you got an Apple product. Drop a 5-star review. Help me kind of grow on there a little bit. It would really, honestly mean the absolute world to me. But that is it. That is all. That's all there is. Me, my boy, we are out for today. We will catch y'all next time. And as always, thank you, love you, peace.